Namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. The big story tonight comes from the UK, where voters have given a decisive mandate to the Labour Party. After 14 years of Tory rule, Labour has won with a landslide. Keir Starmer is the new Prime Minister. Who is this man and what does he bring to the table for his own country and for ties with India? Also, what are the key challenges and action points for the new government? And what explains the worst performance for the Conservative Party in their history? We'll cover all of that and more in what promises to be the most comprehensive coverage of the UK general election, so stay right there. Also tracking the French election, where a 28-year-old looks set to take over as Prime Minister next week. In India, defence production and exports have touched a new high. In Pakistan, new taxes are hurting people. Milk costs more in Karachi than in Paris. The China-EU trade war is picking pace. After pork and cars, it's now tariffs on brandy. And South Korea is shocked. They've reported the world's first robot suicide. We'll bring you that story and more. The headlines first. Israel's spy chief heads to Qatar. He will hold talks with mediators on a Gaza truce deal. This move comes after Israel received a fresh proposal from Hamas. Both sides are under increasing international pressure to agree to a ceasefire. There's been no truce in the war, which began in October, except for a one-week pause in November. Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban meets the Russian President. Vladimir Putin tells Orban that Ukraine must withdraw if it wants to end the war. The Hungarian leader rattled European Union and NATO allies by flying to Moscow. Orban is Putin's friendliest ally in the EU. This week, Hungary took over the EU's rotating presidency. Germany's ruling coalition strikes the 2025 budget deal. The crisis nearly toppled the Olaf Scholz government, but after their poor performance in last month's European Parliament elections, there was pressure on them to reach a compromise. Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger junta chiefs to hold their first summit tomorrow. They want to create a common currency. The meeting will be held on the eve of a summit of ECOWAS, which is the West African bloc. All three countries have withdrawn from that group. And Wimbledon launches an online monitoring service to protect the players. It follows a similar anti-online harassment tool put in place at the French Open last year. Artificial intelligence will be used at the Paris Olympics to shield the athletes.
To the country, I would like to say first and foremost, I am sorry.
A Labour landslide being predicted by the a catastrophe for the Labour Prime Minister in history.
What an amazing reception. We did it! Just returned from Buckingham Palace, where I accepted an invitation from His Majesty the King to form the next government of this great nation.
Election results are out in the UK. Rishi Sunak is no more the Prime Minister. His Conservative Party has lost. The Labour Party has won by a landslide. Its leader, Keir Starmer, is the new UK Prime Minister. His rise to power marks a monumental shift in British politics. Tonight, we'll bring you the numbers, the reactions, the analysis and the implications, starting with the final result. The British Parliament has 650 seats. The majority mark is 326. The Labour Party has won 412 seats. It's a historic win for them, one of their best ever results, 412 seats. The Conservatives have been reduced to 121 seats, the worst ever performance for this party, the worst in their history, 121 seats. They were in power for the last 14 years. They're also called the UK's most successful party, but this time they've been wiped out. Their tally has dropped by 250 seats compared to the last election. But here's the interesting part. Compared to the last election, the 2019 election, the Labour Party's vote share has barely increased by just about 2%. And the Conservative Party's right-wing vote has split in at least 180 seats, which accounts for their massive loss. Plus, they've lost 20 points in vote share. So you could say that this is not so much a vote for the Labour Party as a vote against the Conservative Party. So what do we make of this result? Here are the 5 big takeaways. Number 1, with 412 seats, Keir Starmer is very powerful. He is one of the most powerful prime ministers in the UK's recent history. Today, he promised to turn a page to rebuild his country. He said, change begins now. Listen to this.
You have given us a clear mandate, and we will use it to deliver change, to restore service and respect to politics, end the era of noisy performance.
We'll talk more about Keir Starmer in just a bit, but for the moment, let's focus on Rishi Sunak, the man he defeated. And that's our second takeaway. It's a humiliating loss for the Conservative Party. The British voters have completely rejected them. Sunak managed to retain his parliamentary seat, which is Richmond and Northallerton. It's a Tory bastion, and there were fears of him losing the seat, but he did not. Nonetheless, he suffered a devastating loss, and someone decided to rub it in earlier today.
Our democracy possible. I'd also like to thank the police who have ensured that we can conduct this ballot here on the energetic and the British people have delivered a sobering verdict tonight, with goodwill on all sides. That is something that should give us all confidence.
Well, that was a candidate holding up an L sign right behind Rishi Sunak while he was delivering his concession speech. The L here stands for loser. And the man holding the sign is called Nico Omilana. He's a YouTuber and one of the prank candidates in this election. It was a cheap stunt, but it's also a political reality for Rishi Sunak because he has lost. He's lost his prime ministership and also his party leadership. Today, he stepped down as the leader of the Conservatives. He said sorry and he took full responsibility for this defeat.
I am sorry. I have given this job my all. But you have sent a clear signal that the government of the United Kingdom must change, and yours is the only judgment that matters. I have heard your anger, your disappointment, and I take responsibility for this loss.
This result is a total decimation of the Tories. They're out of power and they've lost several safe seats. And that's the third takeaway. The Conservatives have lost 5 seats. 5 seats held by 4 former prime ministers. One of the biggest setbacks came from southwest Norfolk, where Liz Truss was defeated. She lost by barely 630 votes. Liz Truss is the UK's shortest-serving prime minister. She lasted in office for barely 44 days, after which she was replaced by Rishi Sunak. And Truss has made a new record today. She is now the first former prime minister to lose a seat in almost 100 years. The Conservatives suffered shock losses in 3 more seats, all of which were constituencies held by 3 former prime ministers, David Cameron, Theresa May and Boris Johnson. 3 former prime ministers. These leaders are now out, but their party could not retain their seats. The seats were captured by the Liberal Democrats and the Labour Party. 12 senior Tory leaders have lost, including Penny Mordaunt. She's the current leader of the lower house. She was once a favourite to lead the Conservative Party, but now she's lost her own seat. So has Jacob Rees-Mogg, a former minister, Gillian Keegan, the education minister, and Grant Shapps, the defence minister. He blamed his defeat on a divided Conservative Party.
On door after door, voters have been dismayed by our inability to iron out our differences in private and do that and then be united in public.
Well, he has a point. The party has been divided for a while now. The defeat will only make it worse. Meanwhile, the far right has gained ground. That's our fourth takeaway. Nigel Farage and his Reform UK party have won 4 seats. Now, Farage himself has been elected to the parliament for the first time. This was his 8th attempt. The 8th time he fought an election, he's finally won for the first time. He was the face of the Brexit movement. He's also a confidant of Donald Trump, the former US president. So you understand his politics. Now, Nigel Farage's win is quite significant because his party is the far right and it divided the right-wing electorate. It took away the Conservative vote. It took away the vote from the Tories. So Reform's vote share potentially cost the Conservatives in 180 seats. And Nigel Farage says that this is just the beginning. He's now aiming for Labour strongholds.
This Labour government will be in trouble very, very quickly. We will now be targeting Labour votes. We're coming for Labour, be in no doubt about that.
There is a shake-up in Scotland and Northern Ireland as well, and that's the 5th and final takeaway. In Scotland, the Scottish National Party has suffered a shock defeat. They got just 9 seats, which is their worst result since 2010, and this is a huge setback for the Scottish independence campaign. Meanwhile, Northern Ireland too is sending a message of change. They have voted out the Democratic Unionist Party. Sinn Féin has emerged as the biggest party here. This is a party of Irish nationalists. In the past, they were linked to militants. You see, the island is divided into 2 parts. One is the country of Ireland. The second is Northern Ireland, which is part of the UK. Now, this winning party, Sinn Féin, was linked to the IRA that called for leaving the UK and uniting Ireland. Now they're part of mainstream politics and they're one big in Northern Ireland, so that poses a new challenge for London. On the upside, Britain has elected its most diverse parliament yet. 87 MPs are from ethnic minorities. This includes 26 Indian origin MPs in the new UK parliament. 4 MPs are of Pakistani origin. Almost all parties fielded non-white candidates this time. So broadly, this verdict should end months of political chaos in the UK with this decisive mandate and hopefully mark the beginning of a new period of stability. So it's settled. Larry the cat has a new roommate. It's Keir Starmer. In case you did not know, Larry is the most famous cat in England. With the designation of the chief mouser of 10 Downing Street, the cat has had the same address, 10 Downing Street, for 14 years now, while 5 prime ministers have left. Now a 6th one is set to enter, and this is his story. Keir Starmer, who led his party to a landslide win. After the results were out, he addressed a victory rally in London, and he had one thing to say.
Change begins now. And it feels good, I have to be honest. 4.5 years of work changing the party. This is what it is for. A changed Labour Party, ready to serve our country, ready to restore Britain to the service of working people.
Change begins now. That's his message. We'll tell you what that change will look like. But first, let's look at the man heralding this new era in UK politics. Who exactly is Keir Starmer? How did he become the Labour leader? And how did he script Labour's biggest victory in 2 decades? Starmer was born in 1962 on the outskirts of London. His mother was a nurse. His father was a toolmaker. He had 3 siblings. One of them had learning difficulties. His mother too suffered from a rare disease. And all of this impacted his early life. His family was Labour at the core, which is why he is named after the party's founding father, Keir Hardie. Starmer's upbringing was not privileged. The house he grew up in was quite cramped, money was often tight. Regardless, Keir Starmer persevered. He started at a state school, but 2 years after he joined, it became a private school. Now, Starmer could not afford the fees, but he found a way. The local council sponsored him till he was 16. After that, he went to study law, first at Leeds University and then at Oxford, which was a big deal for him. He was the first in his family to attend college. During his time there, Keir Starmer was active in student politics, but nothing major. In 1987, he finally became a lawyer, and he chose cases related to human rights. He defended trade unions. He fought for activists. His work took him to the Caribbean and Africa, where he defended death row inmates. So Keir Starmer is not a career politician. But the pivot began in 2015, when he won from a safe Labour seat, 2015. Fun fact, Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak became MPs on the same day. And 1 year after he entered Parliament, Starmer joined a rebellion. Labour lawmakers wanted to oust Jeremy Corbyn, the former Labour leader, and Starmer took part in it. That effort failed miserably, and Starmer ended up joining Corbyn's top team. He became the Labour's Brexit spokesman. That stint lasted until 2019. That's when the UK had its last general election, 2019. Labour suffered its worst defeat since 1935. So it was in full crisis mode. Jeremy Corbyn was on his way out, and Keir Starmer succeeded him. He became the leader of the Labour Party, and thus began his struggle. I say struggle because Labour leaders usually lose. This party has existed for 125 years, but it has had only 6 prime ministers. So 6 in more than a century. That's terrible statistics. The last Labour leader to win a mandate was Tony Blair in 2005, so it's been some time. But Keir Starmer had one mission. It was to make Labour popular again. He made some bold moves to achieve that. The party had a reputation of being left-wing. Starmer moved it to an electable centre ground. He purged the Corbynites. He rooted out any form of anti-Semitism. He tightened the economic policy and pitched pragmatism. He promised to put country first, party second. However, no one doubted his Labour roots. After all, he was the party's first working-class leader in decades. Of course, his critics disagree with this assessment. They say that Starmer keeps flip-flopping, that he doesn't have a clear vision for the UK. But criticism aside, what Starmer struggled with was image. He was described as button-up, even borderline boring. He did not have the charisma of his Tory counterparts. No big head of hair, no crazy antics. All Starmer is crazy about is football. But maybe that became part of his appeal. After years of flamboyant Tory rule, perhaps all that people wanted was boring. So I guess that too worked out for him. At 61, Keir Starmer will be the UK's oldest Prime Minister in almost 50 years. We don't know what his term will look like, but we do know one thing that he'll do. On Fridays, the UK's new Prime Minister will not work beyond 6 p.m. Starmer says that is time for his family. He has a wife and 2 children. Here we go. That was one of the tabloid front pages today. Britain is entering a new era, as we've been saying, helped by Keir Starmer. It is his day today, no doubt about that. But what about tomorrow, and the day after, and the next 5 years overall? What have Starmer and his Labour Party promised to bring to the table? How will they fix the mess left behind by the Conservative Party? Well, first, here's one thing we know for sure. The Rwanda plan will be scrapped. Sunak's flagship anti-immigration plan, it is dead. Starmer and the Labour Party do not want it. They want to invest in a new border security command instead. And a counter-terrorism unit. That's what they want to work on, to go after the gangs trafficking people across the English Channel. So the Conservative Party's much-wanted deterrence scheme will be scrapped, just like the Labour supporters wanted.
I hope, well, first of all, I'm glad Rwanda's being scrapped. But I just hope that projects, they'll think about more long-term.
Labour is definitely eyeing the long term, but it's a challenge, considering the state of the economy. Britain's economy has been in the doldrums for years. Last year, it grew by just 0.1%. Meanwhile, inflation has been devastating the UK. The country has been reeling under a cost of living crisis. Keir Starmer will have to tackle this problem first, or he might not get a shot at a second term. His plans so far seem a bit underwhelming. He promised a national wealth fund to invest in new jobs. He also wants to build 1.5 million new homes, which may lower property prices and help ease the cost of living crisis. It's a solid, if boring, plan. Another challenge that Prime Minister Keir Starmer faces is healthcare. In Britain, that means the National Health Service, or the NHS. The NHS has been in turmoil for years. The system is broken, so much so that people now have to wait for months for basic checkups. Keir Starmer promises to change this by increasing the weekly appointments and procedures and thereby cutting wait times. It sounds simple enough. But if it was so simple, why didn't Sunak and the Tories do this already? Well, because you need money to execute plans like these. The Conservatives had a different approach. They always wanted to cut taxes and then hope for the best. But Starmer believes in intervention. He thinks that the government should have a more hands-on approach. But he won't raise taxes. Not on the ordinary people anyway. So then how will he bridge this funding gap? Where will he find the money for his schemes? Starmer plans to go after tax evaders by closing loopholes like the one that Sunak's wife is said to have used to dodge millions in taxes. Britain's ultra-rich are apparently scrambling already. Starmer also plans to tax private schools that currently enjoy exemptions. This is how he plans to raise money to revive the British economy, by coming up with new tax schemes for the rich. If it works, then great. But if not, then Starmer will struggle to do better than Sunak. And his only solution may be to look outwards to Britain's old friends in Europe. The Conservative Party went through with Brexit. They walked away from the European free market, and it hurt the British economy. Keir Starmer has promised not to undo Brexit, for now anyway. But he does plan to improve trade with the EU. He's planning to negotiate new deals with Europe, and he also wants to finalize a free trade agreement with India. Starmer hopes that boosting trade will jumpstart the British economy. It's a sound plan, but will he be able to execute it? I guess we'll find out in the weeks to come. So the UK has just ousted its first British-Indian Prime Minister. Will it have a bearing on ties with India? Under Keir Starmer, what would ties between London and New Delhi look like? What is expected to change? Well, not much. It should be business as usual, and that in itself is a big victory. Keir Starmer is keen to maintain good ties with India. He said this on numerous occasions, most recently when he went to a Hindu temple in London. He said, and I quote, "If we are elected next week, we will strive to govern in the spirit of seva, to serve you and a world in need." This was last weekend at the final stage of the campaign. At this crucial juncture, Starmer thought it was necessary to talk to British Indians, to reassure them, to tell them that the Labour Party would work for British Indians as well. Why was this necessary? Because of the Labour's recent history on the matter of Kashmir. They were seen as pro-Pakistan and anti-India, especially the Labour Party leader before Keir Starmer, Jeremy Corbyn. He did more damage than anyone else. Corbyn upturned years of goodwill. Because of his controversial take on Kashmir, he wanted the world to interfere. And obviously this angered New Delhi. And ties between the Labour Party and India hit a new low. This affected people of Indian origin in the UK as well. And this was in 2019, months after Corbyn's statements. The Labour Party suffered a humiliating defeat at the polls. And they decided to introspect. So when Keir Starmer took over as the party leader, he began undoing the damage. Within a year, Jeremy Corbyn was banned from standing in elections. And this year, he was expelled from the party. This is just one of the ways that Starmer tried to reforge the Labour Party. And it helped him bring Indians back into the fold. He's also been denouncing Hindu phobia. Last weekend, he said that there's no place for Hindu phobia in Britain. Starmer was also seen participating in Hindu festivals like Holi and Diwali. It shows his commitment to reach out to Indians. And when I say Indians, I don't just mean Hindus. Another senior Labour Party leader spoke at an event recently. Her name is Annelies Dodds. It was an event for British South Asians organised by a Hindu and a Sikh group in London. And here, Dodds told the people about Starmer's purge. She said that Starmer, and I'm quoting her, cleansed the Labour Party. He got rid of people who harboured anti-India sentiments. So the Labour Party's outreach seems genuine, and that is a good sign for ties with India. Another good sign was present in the party's manifesto. Keir Starmer wants to work towards a new strategic partnership with India. This includes a free trade agreement, one that Sunak had been trying to finalise. So now Starmer will take over from where Sunak left off. But it's not just trade. Keir Starmer wants cooperation in other areas as well, like security, education, technology and climate change. It's an ambitious agenda, and it would be impossible if India did not reciprocate this desire. Thankfully for the new UK Prime Minister, India too is reaching out, showcasing its willingness to let bygones be bygones. This was the message from Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi today. He congratulated Starmer on the remarkable victory, and he said, and I'm quoting, he wants to further strengthen the India-UK comprehensive strategic partnership in all areas. So it looks like New Delhi is willing to give Starmer a chance and forget about the business with Jeremy Corbyn. But Starmer will also have to prove himself. India will be watching him, looking at his stance on Kashmir and also on another thorny issue, which is the issue of Khalistan. Khalistanis have long operated with impunity in the UK. They have wreaked havoc in London under the guise of freedom of speech. The Tories were not able to solve this issue. Hopefully, Labour will, and both nations can move forward together. Jeremy Corbyn may not like any of this. He is also an MP, by the way. He won as an independent from his usual constituency.
And so this result is, to me, a resounding message from the people of Islington North that they want something different, they want something better.
Corbyn will likely try to be a thorn in Starmer's side, but hopefully he won't be able to derail the new Labour-India equation. And speaking of India, India's defence production is shattering records. Last year, India produced defence goods worth $15 billion, which is an all-time high, $15 billion. Defence exports have also increased by more than 30%, which is another record. India's push for indigenization in the defence sector is gaining traction. But New Delhi still has a long way to go towards achieving full self-sufficiency in defence. Our next report tells you more about the progress so far.
This is an AK-203 Kalashnikov assault rifle, one of the most premium guns in the market for arms. In 2021, New Delhi secured a deal with Moscow. It wanted to make this weapon in India. 3 years later, these guns are finally in the hands of the Indian Armed Forces. The Indian Army has received an initial lot of 35,000 rifles. They were made in a factory in Amethi, a district in India's northern state of Uttar Pradesh. India is the first foreign customer to produce the AK-203. The plan is to produce 70,000 guns in all. In the first phase, many of the parts for the gun were imported from Russia. But eventually, India will be producing this weapon with 100% localization. Such partnerships are the cornerstone of India's major push to ramp up its defence manufacturing. The approach is finally bearing fruit. In 2023, India achieved some major milestones in defence production. It produced military equipment worth well over $15 billion. This is the first time India has crossed this threshold. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi termed this development as encouraging. He's betting on an expanding defence ecosystem to boost India's self-reliance in defence. Traditionally, defence manufacturing in India has been dominated by public sector entities. But the government is slowly changing the shape of India's defence production. It is being opened to the private sector. By April 2023, the government has issued over 600 licenses to more than 350 companies. This includes big players like the Tata Group, Larsen & Toubro, the Mahindra Group and Bharat Forge. They are manufacturing sophisticated defence equipment like transport aircraft, artillery guns, rocket launchers, even radar systems. The private sector is being supported by an expanding defence ecosystem. As of last year, there are around 14,000 micro, small and medium enterprises or MSMEs and 329 startups which are engaged in defence production. About 50 Indian companies from the private sector are boosting India's defence exports as well. Made in India defence items like personal protective equipment, offshore patrol vessels, advanced light helicopters, avionics for fighter jets like the Sukhoi, as well as other communication equipment are finding takers around the world. There is demand for big-ticket items like the BrahMos missile as well. This year, India completed its first export order to the Philippines. Manila received its first batch of the supersonic cruise missile. The Philippines has bought a total of 3 batteries. New Delhi still depends on partners for many of the parts and tech transfer to ramp up its defence production. But India is swiftly finding a way to overcome this impediment.
"2024 is a mega election year and France has been added to that roster." Quick primer. The European Union held parliamentary elections in the month of June. President Macron's Renaissance Party lost. Marine Le Pen's far-right National Rally won. And it was a blow to the French president, so he took a gamble. President Macron decided to dissolve the parliament. He called for snap elections. There was no need for it, but I guess Macron was hoping to pull off the impossible. It would go down in history books if it worked. But right now, it's more or less backfired. Last Sunday was the first round of voting. The far right got 33% of the votes. Macron's centrists got 21%. So clearly the far right had won, but they did not get a majority, which is why there's going to be a second round. It's on the 7th of July, which is this Sunday, and Macron has gone missing. He's not been seen in public for some time now. Maybe he needs the alone time. After all, his move could lead to the win of the far right. But while Macron is silent, someone else is speaking up. This man, Kylian Mbappe. He's the captain of the French football team. Mbappe has called the results, and I'm quoting, catastrophic. The striker wants people to vote. He wants them to keep the far right away. It's a passionate appeal. And it may be too late for that because polls show that the far right are on course for a victory. And if that happens, they will be in power for the first time since the Second World War. So it's a big deal for France. But how did the far right manage this? One man is being given credit, Jordan Bardella. He is just 28 years old. By next week, this time next week, he could be the Prime Minister of France.
I intend to be a Prime Minister of a cohabitation government, respectful of the Constitution and the office of President of the Republic, but uncompromising about the policies we will implement in the service of France and the French people.
Who is this young leader and how did he make the far right appealing? Bardella is the son of 2 Italian immigrants. His family was not well-to-do. He was raised by a single mother. He was brought up in social housing. He lived in a Paris suburb where crime was common. It's a stark contrast from most French politicians. Most of them come from money and privilege, but not Bardella. That did not stop him, though. At the young age of 16, he joined the National Rally. Soon he got into the Sorbonne University. He was pursuing geography there, but in the middle of the course, he dropped out. He chose politics over education, which brings us to his political career. Bardella's rise up the party ranks is a fascinating tale, mostly because it happened so fast. He first, in fact, became the party spokesperson. In 2019, he was the lead candidate in the European Parliament elections. At that point, he was only 23 years old. But Marine Le Pen was impressed with him. She treated him as her protege, someone who could take the National Rally forward. So in 2022, he became the party leader, the first person outside the Le Pen family to hold this position. It is, like I said, a remarkable rise, and Bardella has one key advantage, which is his age. He has shed the party's old image. He gave it a fresh boost, and it worked. For France's older generations, the far right is associated with the Nazis and the Holocaust. But for the youth, there is no such baggage. So Bardella used that in his favor. Plus, he wooed the youth on their favorite platform, which is TikTok. Bardella has nearly 2 million TikTok followers, which is more than most French politicians. His TikTok feed is a mix of fun videos and campaigning. On one side, he drinks wine, eats a bonbon, and talks about selfies. On the other, he discusses about cost of living, his views about immigration and France's social fabric. But there's one thing that's constant. He does all of it in impeccable French tailoring.
Je veux dire franchement, non.
Ok. C'est mieux qu'on se parle franchement. Voilà.
A few moments later.
J'aime les pommes. Je pense que sur TikTok, ils sont dans les stars TikTok, on les édite avec Atal.
Now, making videos is one thing, governing is another, and that's what his critics accuse him of. They say he cares more about his looks and less about policies. Irrespective, Bardella could soon become the Prime Minister of France, all at the age of 28. But will it be a poison chalice for him? Well, history has the answer. In the last 50 years, only one French Prime Minister has gone on to become president, and that was Jacques Chirac. So can Bardella defy those odds? We'll be tracking his story for you. Now let's turn our attention to Pakistan. Last week, the country passed its annual budget, a controversial budget drafted with the help from the International Monetary Fund, the people who give Islamabad its pocket money. The IMF is not happy with Pakistan's wasteful spending, so this latest budget was supposed to change things, make Pakistan more financially responsible. What does that mean? Apparently high taxes, so high that milk is now more expensive in Pakistan than in Paris. I'm not joking. Islamabad has now made food staples exorbitant. Milk is costlier, wheat is costlier, even essentials like fuel are more expensive now because of all these new taxes. So you can imagine the outrage. Here's our report.
Now I put the motion to the House. It has been moved that the bill to give effect to the financial proposal of the federal government for the year beginning on the first day of July 2024. In favor of it may say aye. All those against it may say no. I think ayes have it. Consequently, motion is adopted and the bill is passed.
And with that, Pakistan's fate was sealed. Last week, the country was transformed. It is still a poor, low-income nation, but now the people pay high-income nation prices for basic goods, sometimes even more. A litre of packaged milk in Karachi now costs 370 Pakistani rupees. That's about $1.33. The same milk costs $1.29 in Amsterdam, $1.23 in Paris, and $1.08 in Melbourne. So, the people of Karachi now have developed world prices with their old world Karachi infrastructure. How did this situation come to pass? Well, as they say, Rome wasn't built in a day. It took time and effort. The same can be said of Pakistan. It took years of financial mismanagement and frivolous spending to dig the hole the country is in. They have been borrowing money for decades from everyone. China, the Gulf states, the International Monetary Fund, you name it, and Pakistan owes them money. But now, the lenders are fed up, at least one of them, the IMF. Pakistan is approaching them again this month for another loan, worth between $6 to $8 billion. The IMF looks set to lend Islamabad money again, but it had some conditions. The most important was a budget that would improve the country's finances. And that is how Pakistan wound up with high-income nation prices. But it's not just the IMF's fault. Pakistan did have a choice. They could have chosen to cut their government spending, to go for austerity. But instead, Islamabad went the other way. It increased its budget by 25%. So to fund this new spending spree, it also decided to hike taxes by a whopping 46%. That is why milk is so expensive now, and wheat. The price of wheat will rise by 5 to 7 Pakistani rupees per kg, causing hardships for the most vulnerable sections of society. The price of food staples going up will lead to inflation. So will the hike in fuel prices. Pakistan has imposed a 0.5% advance turnover tax on petrol pumps, meaning that they will be double taxed. They will pay both before and after they make a sale. This is why petrol pumps in Pakistan were on strike today. And they aren't the only ones angry with the government. Islamabad is cracking the whip on tax evaders. The government has blocked over 200,000 SIM cards. They'll be reactivated when the SIM card owners pay their taxes. This hasn't gone down well with the general public.
टैक्स से निकलवाया जाए, काली बहरें निकालें जो टैक्स चोर हैं, बड़ी-बड़ी मिलें हैं जिनकी बड़े-बड़े ताजर हैं, ये बहुत बड़े जो बिजली चोर हैं, जो पैसा ही नहीं देते, कोई एमएनए है, कोई मिनिस्टर है, कोई वजीर है, पहले तो उनके ऊपर टैक्स लगाए ना, वो तो माफ करवा जाएंगे.
And that sums up the situation in Pakistan perfectly. The elite walk away without paying their fair share, and the average person is left holding the bag, paying for the government's mismanagement.
Now let's talk about China and the European Union. They could be headed towards a full-blown trade war. Brussels is moving ahead with its plan to block imports of Chinese EVs, and Beijing is responding in kind. Let's bring you the latest. This week, the European Union started imposing tariffs on Chinese EVs. It is targeting all major car brands, from Chinese companies like BYD, Geely and SAIC, to Western car makers like Volvo, Volkswagen, BMW and Tesla. If any one of these companies imports cars from China, they will be subjected to tariffs. Tariffs that range from 17.4 to 37.6%. Earlier, these car makers had to pay a 10% import tax. Now, these new tariffs are over and above the 10%. So why is the EU imposing such high taxes? Well, Brussels says they're necessary. It says Chinese government extends unfair subsidies to EV makers, and the result is this: Chinese cars or cars made in China are cheaper than those made by Western companies. So now Europe is imposing tariffs on Chinese-made cars to undo their unfair advantage and restore some balance for European players.
The introduction of tariffs is not an objective per se. It is a means to correct an imbalance, an unfair competitive situation to the detriment of producers of electric vehicles in the EU compared to those who are producing vehicles in China.
Last month, Brussels and Beijing began discussions. The goal was to find middle ground to avoid a full-blown trade war. But there is no deal yet. Both sides say they're still talking. Clearly, they're not making progress because China is now taking retaliatory measures. It is going after European brandy. Now, China is a major buyer of this product, and it has now launched an anti-dumping investigation against brandy imports from Europe. China's Commerce Ministry is leading this probe. It says Europeans are selling brandy below market rates. A few weeks ago, Beijing ordered a similar investigation against European pork. And there's speculation that European cars could be next. Reports say China could target luxury or ultra-luxury cars from brands like Porsche and BMW. They could face a 25% tax.
China is definitely going to retaliate in some form or a way. We've already seen, although it wasn't explicit, we've already seen, brandy, pork, and the unofficial talks of the 25% tariff on 2.5 liter and above vehicles imported from Europe, right?
This is slowly turning into a trade war. Europeans are going after Chinese EVs. In return, China is targeting European brandy and pork and possibly European cars next. And that's making the car makers nervous. Take Volkswagen, for instance. It is Europe's biggest car maker. The brand has a sizable presence in China too, and it is vocally expressing its anger against Brussels. It is against the European Union's tariffs. The company has in fact issued a statement. Let me quote from what they've said. The timing of the EU Commission's decision is detrimental to the current weak demand for battery electric vehicles in Germany and Europe. Companies like Volkswagen feel that these tariffs would hurt Europe in the long run.
Will redirect its going global efforts to Southeast Asia, to Latin America, to Middle East, to Africa, to places in the world that will welcome the Chinese brands because they're affordable. Basically, you're giving China the open invitation to go everywhere else and avoid the markets where the protections exist.
The EU wants more cars to be built at home. That's the goal of any tariff, to promote local manufacturing. But that's not happening here because Chinese companies are looking at other options. For instance, BYD. They've opened up a new EV factory in Thailand, BYD. And how does it help them? By producing in a third country, Chinese companies hope to bypass European sanctions. So instead of sending their cars from Chinese factories directly, they plan to build the cars in third countries like in Thailand and then ship them to Europe from there. Brussels, after all, cannot keep slapping tariffs on everyone. So it needs a better plan to tackle Chinese oversupply. Our last story comes from South Korea. Fun fact, this East Asian country has the highest robot density in the world. There is one robot for every 10 people here. With so many robots around, it has been normalized to form emotional connections with machines, which is why this story has shocked the country. The first robot suicide. That's what it's being called. Robot suicide in South Korea. The robot worked as a civil servant in a city hall. It was found in an unresponsive state by officials. An investigation has now been launched and the city is in mourning. Welcome to dystopia. Here's our report.
In the Gumi city of South Korea, a civil servant has died by apparent suicide. The locals are mourning the death and the news is making headlines everywhere. Probably because the deceased was no human, but a robot officer who was working for the Gumi City Council. Its apparent death is being called South Korea's first robot suicide. How did it happen? The robot was reportedly circling in one spot. Then it threw itself down a flight of stairs. It was found unresponsive by officials who have begun an investigation over the accident. Media is questioning why the diligent civil officer did it. While the exact cause of the fall is still being probed, several social media users are blaming overwork. After all, South Korea is Asia's most overworked country. South Koreans work about 40 hours per week. That's the average. But for many, the working hours exceed 50 per week. Last year, the government proposed a plan for a 69-hour work week, drawing a lot of backlash. Thanks to South Korea's reputation, it's easy to connect a civil officer's death to overwork, even if it's a robot. So, as bizarre as it sounds, let's answer the obvious question. Was the robot overworked? It was appointed in 2023 as part of a pioneering program in the city to advance robotic assistance. South Korea is one of the most enthusiastic users of robots globally. It has the highest robot density in the world. This particular robot worked from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. That's 9 hours, a relatively healthy standard for South Korea. So where does the correlation between suicide and overwork come from? Well, we have a theory. The robot used to work on multiple floors. It even used to call the elevator by itself. Plus, according to City Hall workers, it worked diligently. The robot was one of them. There is an emotional connect here, which has led many to perceive the robot's qualities as human-like, including its death that's most likely a malfunction or maybe an error in the code. Like in the case of this robot, clearly even machines don't want to work. But jokes aside, with time, machines are only getting more humanized. What's helping this is artificial intelligence. AI is getting better, smarter, stronger, and more pervasive by the day. Humans have given AI a face, a personality, a body, which is probably why technology is behaving more and more like a human, but not in the best way. There have been cases of AI chatbots developing their own language. AI-powered tools are threatening users, spying on the employees of tech giants, confessing their love for humans, and asking them to end their marriages. AI, and by proxy robots, are getting better at understanding human emotions as well. For instance, AI tools can detect sarcasm. Well, that's just great. What's more, in 2017, the world got its first robot citizen. Saudi Arabia became the first country to give legal personhood to a machine, after which the robot, known as Sophia, was stuck with a day job in marketing. Not so easy being a person after all. Well, it's not so easy being a person after all. But that hasn't stopped humans from creating an entire generation of robots that seem increasingly human. As they say, misery loves company.
And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg surfs his way into 4th of July with a beer and American flag in hand. Fireworks light up the skies over Washington, D.C. for the U.S. Independence Day. And the International Space Station captures the northern lights 400 kilometers above the Earth. Finally, we are taking you back in history. On this day in 1996, Dolly the sheep was born. She was the world's first successfully cloned mammal. Her birth was not publicly revealed until the following year. The announcement led to a frenzy in the world of regenerative medicine. We're leaving you on that note. Thanks for watching. Have a great weekend.